Ethan Carter was 38 years old, and for the past 12 years, he had quietly built a life that balanced stability and ambition, working as a logistics consultant in Charlotte while nurturing a close circle of friends and maintaining his meticulously organized penthouse downtown. Each morning he woke at 5:30 a.m., brewed a fresh pot of dark roast coffee, and reviewed his project schedules on a sleek marble desk in his sunlit office before heading out to oversee deliveries and client meetings. His routine was precise, from the way he folded his shirts to the way he lined up his car keys on the kitchen counter, a small black SUV waiting outside for his commute. Every detail of his life reflected careful attention, from the subtle fragrance of cedarwood in the apartment to the polished countertops in his kitchen and the faint hum of traffic through the wide windows that framed the skyline. Then, one Thursday evening, as Ethan returned from a client presentation, a single envelope lying on the glossy surface of the kitchen island caught his eye, its paper thick and embossed, an unfamiliar script curling across the top. Something felt wrong. He lifted it, and the handwritten note inside made his chest tighten instantly, the words hinting at a betrayal he hadn't seen coming. Monica Brooks, his fiancée, had invited him to her engagement party not as a celebration, but to humiliate him in front of everyone. He had no idea what was coming. The apartment felt suddenly smaller, the warm amber light of the pendant lamps casting long shadows across the marble, the faint aroma of her expensive perfume still lingering in the air, a chilling contrast to the familiarity of his carefully curated sanctuary. Ethan's mind immediately shifted into observation mode. He noted every detail without panic, recording each subtle cue, the way her handwriting curled, the precise placement of the envelope, the angle of sunlight glancing off the silverware, preparing to gather the data he would need to understand the situation fully. Something about the tone of the note made him pause, then he saw it, a subtle hint that the party would be staged, that the humiliation was calculated, every guest placed for effect. He breathed slowly, letting the familiar scent of polished oak and leather sofas anchor him, the soft ticking of the wall clock keeping him steady. He moved deliberately, scanning the room, noting the faint clink of his wine glasses in the cabinet, the soft hum of the HVAC system, the gleam of the marble island, imagining the scene that awaited him and how he could turn it into his advantage. Then he heard it, the muffled laughter from the living room where he had left some packages earlier, a sound that should have been innocuous but now signaled that events had begun shifting. His pulse remained calm, his eyes sharp, his thoughts precise. He was not yet reacting outwardly, only absorbing, cataloging, preparing for every possibility. Everything changed after that moment. The light through the penthouse windows cast long reflections across the hardwood floor, glinting off the black leather of his chair and the polished steel appliances, emphasizing the stark contrast between his normal, orderly life and the chaos hinted at in the note. Many cliffhanger thoughts ran through his mind. Something's about to unfold. Then he saw it, this isn't what it seems. He moved toward the sliding doors, the city lights twinkling outside like scattered stars, and took a slow sip of coffee, inhaling the mingling scents of roasted beans, cedar, and expensive cologne lingering faintly in the air, each detail anchoring him as he prepared to face the unknown. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I want you to imagine walking into a familiar room and suddenly discovering that everything you trusted, every routine you cherished, is about to be turned on its head. Ethan Carter stood there, eyes narrowing, processing, ready to turn the unexpected into his advantage, as the golden glow of the city behind him promised both suspense and revelation. Ethan Carter spent the next morning moving through his penthouse with deliberate calm, noting every reflection on the polished marble floor, every subtle crease in the leather chairs, and the faint scent of cedar and morning coffee that filled the air. He methodically checked the black SUV parked outside, the sunlight glinting off its glossy surface, confirming everything was in place. His eyes scanned the kitchen where a crystal wine glass sat atop the counter, catching the first rays of sunlight, and he let himself trace the angles of the room, from the stainless steel appliances to the neatly folded dish towels, the familiar rhythm grounding him as he processed the previous evening's revelation. Something felt off, the edges of routine shifted, and yet he remained composed, every motion precise, every observation logged mentally. Ethan poured himself a cup of coffee, its aroma mingling with the faint vanilla from a candle still burning from the night before, and sipped slowly, listening to the distant hum of early morning traffic and the soft whir of the ceiling fan above. He moved to the office desk where his laptop lay open, displaying spreadsheets of client accounts and delivery schedules, each figure a familiar anchor in the midst of uncertainty. Then he began cross-referencing notes, pulling up emails and calendar entries, scanning for patterns, anomalies, anything that could reveal intent or timing. He did not rush, knowing that patience was a strategic advantage, his fingers resting lightly on the keyboard as he compiled the data. Outside, the city stirred, honking cars, a delivery truck's engine rumbling, the faint scent of bakery bread drifting from the street below, all painted a realistic backdrop against which the unfolding suspense gained dimension. Ethan's gaze returned to the penthouse windows, the sunlight bouncing off the skyscraper glass, illuminating details in the room he had never fully appreciated, the soft sheen on the oak dining table, the subtle reflections in the polished silver utensils, the way the morning light emphasized the texture of the marble countertops. Each observation fed his awareness, heightening the tension without forcing an emotional reaction, allowing him to maintain composure while preparing for the confrontation he sensed was imminent. Many cliffhanger thoughts ran through his mind: something is not as it seems, he will not expect this, everything hinges on the next move. He took another measured sip of coffee, feeling the warmth spread through his hands and chest, and listened to the subtle shift in the air, the quiet creaks of the floorboards beneath his feet, the distant echo of footsteps on the streets below, cataloging each sensory input with precision. The apartment seemed to breathe along with him, the soft reflection of sunlight on the marble and glass surfaces creating an almost cinematic effect, the faint aroma of his expensive cologne lingering, blending with the natural scents of the morning. Ethan paused briefly by the kitchen island, eyes narrowing as he traced a subtle fingerprint on the polished surface, a tiny, almost imperceptible clue that suggested someone had been there recently, a small mystery that made his mind race while his demeanor remained calm. He moved to the living room, noting the positioning of furniture, the way light fell across the plush rug, the slight tilt of a framed photograph on the wall, all details catalogued meticulously as part of the unfolding narrative in his mind. Something shifted in the corner of his vision, a movement outside the window, the glint of polished black metal catching his eye, and he froze momentarily, analyzing before reacting. His heartbeat remained steady, yet the stakes had risen, every detail mattered. He returned to the desk, opened a fresh notebook, and began jotting observations and hypotheses, mapping potential outcomes, his analytical mind converting uncertainty into strategy. The hum of the city, the clink of glass, the smooth marble under his fingers, and the warmth of sunlight combined into a heightened awareness, cinematic and immersive, each moment building suspense as he prepared for the inevitable encounter that would test patience, observation, and composure. Ethan Carter stepped out onto the balcony, the morning air crisp against his skin, the city below stretching in a tapestry of glass, concrete, and moving traffic. The subtle hum of engines blended with distant voices, creating a soft symphony that contrasted sharply with the tension building in his mind. He observed the streets, noting delivery trucks, pedestrians, and cyclists navigating familiar routes, cataloging every motion as if each could provide insight into the unfolding situation. His gaze lingered on the black SUV parked with deliberate precision, sunlight bouncing off the polished surface and reflecting into the apartment, a reminder of both his control and the hidden layers of wealth that had quietly accumulated under his careful management. Something felt different in the rhythm of the day, a subtle shift that made his instincts sharpen, the faint scent of cedarwood and freshly brewed coffee mixing with the delicate aroma of vanilla from a candle still burning in the corner of the living room. He moved back inside, running his hand across the marble countertop, feeling the coolness beneath his fingertips, and let his eyes trace the layout of the kitchen, the polished steel appliances, the glass front cabinets, each filled with carefully arranged crystal glassware, the soft gleam of sunlight on the marble backsplash. Then he noticed a small, almost imperceptible detail, a paperweight shifted slightly from its usual position, the edges of a folded napkin catching the light differently than he remembered. Many cliffhanger thoughts surfaced: this is not as it seems, every detail matters, he will not expect this. Ethan remained outwardly composed, letting his mind process methodically while his senses absorbed every nuance. He picked up his tablet and began reviewing notes, cross-referencing emails and calendar appointments, noting patterns, inconsistencies, and any hint of planning he could detect. The soft click of keys echoed across the penthouse, mingling with the distant chatter of early morning pedestrians below, creating a rhythm that grounded him even as tension mounted. Light shifted through the expansive windows, highlighting the texture of the oak floors and the subtle grain in the leather furniture, casting long shadows that danced across the space, emphasizing both the beauty and the precision of his surroundings. Ethan took a deliberate breath, inhaling the layered scents of polished wood, coffee, and faint cologne lingering in the air, each element anchoring him as he analyzed the situation. He catalogued every sensory input, from the distant clatter of a construction site 2 blocks away to the soft rustle of leaves brushing the balcony railing, each detail feeding into his growing understanding of the imminent scenario. Then he noticed a subtle movement outside, a shadow shifting in the reflection of the balcony glass, and he paused, eyes narrowing, measuring every angle, every possible trajectory, maintaining his calm demeanor while mental simulations ran continuously in the background. Ethan allowed himself a moment to adjust his perspective, moving across the space with quiet precision, running a finger along the smooth marble edges of the dining table, noting the glint of sunlight against a crystal vase, imagining how every visual cue could influence perception. Many cliffhanger thoughts continued to surface naturally, then he saw it, the arrangement is deliberate, everything will change in moments. The soft hum of the HVAC system, the subtle clinking of glass from a nearby cabinet, the filtered sunlight across the apartment, all created an immersive cinematic environment, heightening suspense while Ethan methodically prepared for the next encounter, aware that each observation could be crucial in determining how he would turn the situation to his advantage, balancing patience, awareness, and strategy as the city and penthouse came alive around him. Ethan Carter moved deliberately through his penthouse, each step measured, the smooth oak floors reflecting the morning light that streamed through the expansive windows, highlighting the polished marble countertops and the faint shimmer of crystal glassware arranged meticulously on the kitchen island. He paused for a moment, observing the subtle placement of objects, the way a single wine glass caught the sunlight, casting a prism of colors across the granite surface, a detail that could easily go unnoticed but spoke volumes in the meticulous arrangement of a living space. The faint aroma of roasted coffee beans mingled with the lingering vanilla from a candle, creating a sensory backdrop that grounded him even as tension coiled tightly in his mind. Something shifted in the atmosphere, an almost imperceptible alteration in the light, a shadow falling differently across the room, signaling that the ordinary rhythm of his morning had been disrupted. Many cliffhanger thoughts surfaced. This is more than it appears, he will not expect this next move, everything hinges on the next observation. Ethan opened his tablet and reviewed his notes again, scanning emails, calendar appointments, and subtle indicators of timing, behavior, and intent, cataloging each with the precision of someone trained to detect patterns in seemingly mundane details. He moved to the living room, the soft hum of the HVAC system blending with the distant sounds of the city below, tires on asphalt, the faint hiss of a bicycle passing, a dog barking somewhere far off, each adding texture to the setting that was both familiar and charged with anticipation. His gaze lingered on the black SUV parked with exacting symmetry below, the sunlight bouncing off its polished surface, reminding him of the quiet power he commanded and the careful orchestration that surrounded his life. Ethan noted the subtle reflections in the polished steel appliances, the angles of light across the leather chairs, the gentle sway of a curtain as a soft breeze passed through the balcony doors, all of which heightened his awareness without disrupting his composure. Then he noticed a slight detail that had shifted since the last observation, a folded napkin on the dining table, angled differently, suggesting human intervention and signaling the potential for orchestrated events yet to unfold. Many cliffhanger thoughts continued to thread through his mind. Something is hidden, the timing is deliberate, the first moment will change everything. He poured himself a fresh cup of coffee, inhaling deeply, the warmth of the cup grounding his senses, and walked slowly to the office area, noting the sheen on the marble, the glint of sunlight on the computer screen, and the polished edges of the desk where his meticulously arranged notes lay. He began cataloging possible scenarios, assigning likelihoods and consequences with methodical precision, each mental calculation reinforcing his calm exterior even as the suspense escalated. Outside, the city life continued, the morning sun casting long reflections across the skyscrapers, the distant hum of activity below contrasting with the quiet, deliberate stillness within the penthouse. Ethan allowed himself to pause briefly, eyes tracing the interplay of light and shadow across the apartment, noting the soft scent of his cologne lingering in the air, the faint echo of footsteps on the polished floors, and the subtle shift of light on the crystal vase by the window. Every sensory input, every small anomaly became a data point in his mind, feeding the larger strategy he was assembling, maintaining a balance between observation, patience, and calculated anticipation. He straightened slightly, the polished marble under his fingertips, the hum of the city beneath him, and took another slow sip of coffee, each movement deliberate, each breath measured, aware that the next moments would require both insight and composure, and that every observation counted toward the unfolding scenario that was rapidly approaching. Ethan Carter spent the afternoon preparing for what he knew was coming, moving through the penthouse with deliberate care, his eyes scanning every detail from the polished marble countertops to the black leather chairs positioned perfectly in the living area. The sunlight had shifted lower, casting golden beams across the hardwood floors and creating long reflections on the stainless steel appliances, the glint catching in his peripheral vision as he methodically checked the environment. Something felt unsettled in the air, a subtle tension that made him pause and listen, the faint hum of the HVAC system blending with distant city traffic and the soft clatter of a neighbor's dog in the courtyard below. He walked to the kitchen island, noting the arrangement of crystal wine glasses, their rims reflecting the warm afternoon light, and the small shimmer of dust motes dancing in the air, each element feeding his heightened awareness. Many cliffhanger thoughts surfaced: he will not see this coming, every motion counts, the moment is near. Ethan pulled out a notebook and began documenting subtle inconsistencies he had observed throughout the morning, from the angle of the sunlight on the marble to the slight displacement of a decorative vase, cataloging each as part of a larger pattern he was beginning to piece together. The faint scent of vanilla mingled with the roasted coffee he had left brewing, grounding him in a sensory anchor as he continued to observe, cross-referencing each note with mental simulations of the upcoming events, imagining possible reactions, possible missteps, and ways to maintain control. He moved to the balcony, the city stretching out beneath him, skyscrapers reflecting the afternoon sun, streets humming with traffic, the distant sound of construction adding a layer of realism to the cinematic tableau, each detail serving as both backdrop and potential clue. The black SUV outside glinted, parked with careful precision, its polished surface reflecting light into the apartment, a reminder of the resources at his disposal and the strategic position he held in this unfolding scenario. Ethan's gaze shifted to the office area, the laptop open and displaying spreadsheets, emails, and calendar entries, each item a potential insight, each anomaly logged with precision as he considered timing, placement, and human behavior. He paused to inhale deeply, the mingling scents of polished wood, coffee, and subtle cologne filling his senses, noting the way light hit the crystal vase again, the soft reflection dancing across the marble, reinforcing the layered awareness he maintained. Many cliffhanger thoughts threaded through continuously, then he noticed it: everything is aligned for a revelation, the first signal will trigger everything else. Ethan remained outwardly calm, movements precise, analyzing the interplay of environment, light, and timing, aware that each subtle cue could dictate the next critical step, the balance between observation and action dictating the success of the plan he was constructing. He returned to the living area, fingertips brushing the smooth edges of the marble, ears attuned to the faintest sound, from the distant city hum to the soft creak of the balcony door as a breeze shifted, cataloging sensory data into mental notes with meticulous care, each observation enhancing the suspense, building toward the confrontation that was now inevitable, the cinematic tension of light, sound, scent, and spatial arrangement all converging to create an immersive and controlled stage for what was about to unfold. Ethan Carter finally allowed himself to step back from the meticulous observation within the penthouse and turned his attention toward the preparation for the engagement party, his mind assembling a strategic plan while his senses remained finely tuned to every detail of his environment. The sun had moved further west, casting longer shadows across the hardwood floors and illuminating the subtle textures of the leather furniture, the sheen of the marble countertop, and the glint of crystal glassware aligned precisely along the kitchen island. He poured a fresh cup of dark roast coffee, inhaling the aroma deeply, letting it sharpen his focus as he moved to the balcony overlooking the city, noting the distant hum of traffic, the glint of sunlight bouncing off the skyscraper windows, and the faint rustle of leaves from the trees lining the streets below. Something felt distinctly charged in the air, a quiet tension that made him adjust his stance and take note of the black SUV parked at the curb, the polished metal reflecting the shifting sunlight and hinting at the presence of others involved in the unfolding scenario. Many cliffhanger thoughts ran through his mind. This is the setup, everything will pivot soon, he will not anticipate this. Ethan methodically checked the placement of objects in his apartment, from the slight tilt of a framed photograph on the wall to the alignment of decorative items on the shelves, cataloging every nuance with mental precision, understanding that minor changes could indicate the timing and scope of what awaited him. The faint scent of vanilla from a lingering candle, the warmth of sunlight on his skin, the hum of the HVAC system, and the distant city sounds combined to create a heightened sense of awareness, each sensory detail feeding into his strategic visualization of the event. He moved to the office area, reviewing emails, schedules, and notes, cross-referencing previous interactions to anticipate any deviations from normal patterns, ensuring that he could adapt instantly while maintaining composure. Outside, the city pulsed with life, pedestrians moving along the sidewalks, distant construction creating a subtle rhythm, each contributing to the layered realism of the environment he observed with calculated attention. Ethan's gaze returned to the balcony, noticing the glint of polished metal on nearby vehicles, the angle of sunlight on glass surfaces, the gentle sway of a curtain in the breeze, and the shifting reflections across the marble and steel in his apartment, all contributing to a mental map of potential variables. He paused to inhale again, coffee warming his hands, noting how each detail, the polished countertops, the glint on crystal, the faint smell of cedarwood, could influence perception and provide insight into the dynamics that would unfold. Many cliffhanger thoughts threaded naturally, then he noticed it, timing is everything, the first movement will trigger the cascade. Ethan maintained a steady, outward calm, moving deliberately as he mentally rehearsed interactions, responses, and outcomes, integrating the sensory information, environmental cues, and timing into a cohesive strategy, understanding that patience, observation, and precise awareness would dictate his advantage in the imminent scenario. He allowed himself a final slow breath, eyes scanning the city, the apartment, the SUV below, the warm afternoon light reflecting across every surface, fully absorbing the cinematic detail of the world around him, each element a part of the suspenseful tension building toward the encounter that would define the outcome of the day. Ethan Carter checked his watch as the afternoon light deepened into a warm golden hue, casting long shadows across the marble floors and highlighting the textures of the oak furniture in his penthouse. He moved methodically, ensuring that everything was arranged precisely, the crystal wine glasses aligned perfectly on the countertop, the polished steel appliances gleaming in the sun, the leather chairs angled just so in the living area. The city below hummed quietly, distant horns, murmurs of pedestrians, and the faint hum of a delivery truck creating a layered soundscape that anchored him in the present moment while tension coiled in anticipation. Ethan poured a final cup of coffee, inhaling the aroma deeply, letting it sharpen his focus as he returned to the office desk to review his notes, the soft click of his pen marking each observation. Something shifted in the reflection off the kitchen island, a subtle glint that suggested movement beyond the obvious, a detail that pulled his attention immediately, signaling that the time to act was approaching. Many cliffhanger thoughts ran through his mind, the moment draws near, every step is calculated, then it will unfold. He walked slowly to the balcony, the sunlight glinting off the black SUV below, noting the precise angle of the vehicle, the glint on the rims, the way it reflected the afternoon light back into his apartment, anchoring him in both control and awareness. The soft hum of the HVAC blended with the distant city noise, the aroma of polished wood and coffee grounding him as he visualized the upcoming encounter, anticipating every movement, every glance, every reaction. Ethan noted the subtle shifts in the air, the gentle sway of a curtain, the way the sunlight caught the edge of a crystal decanter on the shelf, feeding his calculations without disturbing his composed exterior. He moved back inside, fingertips brushing the cool marble, each touch a deliberate check of the environment, cataloging every sensory input from the faint scent of vanilla to the warmth of sunlight on his skin, converting each observation into a mental map of strategy. The faint echo of footsteps in the hallway below, the distant chirping of birds, the gentle hum of traffic combined to create an immersive backdrop for the tension building in his mind, each detail contributing to the suspense. Many cliffhanger thoughts continued, something is poised to happen, every angle has been considered, nothing will be left to chance. Ethan sat briefly at the office chair, glancing at the spreadsheets and notes on the desk, each line item feeding into his plan, each email and calendar entry a piece of the puzzle, integrating environmental cues, timing, and human behavior into a cohesive anticipation. He moved to the living room, noting reflections off polished surfaces, the glint on crystal, the way shadows elongated across the floor as the sun dipped lower, each visual element reinforcing the cinematic quality of the scene and the precision of his preparations. The soft scent of cedarwood from a lingering candle mingled with coffee and subtle cologne, providing a sensory anchor as he continued to observe, analyze, and anticipate. Ethan allowed himself one slow breath, the warmth of the coffee cup grounding him, eyes scanning the city, the penthouse, the black SUV below, the golden light across every surface, fully absorbing the environment, heightening suspense while maintaining perfect composure, ready for the moments that would unfold into revelation and reaction. Ethan Carter finally made his way toward the penthouse entrance, the golden sunlight now slanting through the wide windows and casting sharp, elongated reflections across the polished marble and oak floors, highlighting the subtle gleam of crystal glassware and the soft sheen of leather chairs positioned with meticulous precision. He paused at the doorway, noting the angle of light on the countertop, the gentle sway of a curtain stirred by a light breeze, and the glint of polished silver on the kitchen appliances, each detail reinforcing the precise environment he had curated and the elevated sense of control he maintained. The distant hum of the city below, punctuated by the occasional honk of a horn or the muffled sound of footsteps, created a layered audio backdrop as he took deliberate steps, the soft padding of his shoes against the hardwood measured and steady, anchoring him to the moment. Many cliffhanger thoughts threaded through his awareness. The first interaction will set everything into motion, every observation counts, then the shift will be undeniable. Ethan moved toward the office, fingers lightly brushing the smooth surface of the marble as he checked the alignment of notes, emails, and calendar entries, reviewing each item with methodical precision, anticipating timing, sequence, and human behavior in the upcoming event. The faint aroma of roasted coffee blended with the subtle vanilla lingering from a candle, grounding his senses while heightening focus, as his eyes scanned the polished surfaces, noting reflections and angles, the glint of sunlight off glass and steel enhancing the cinematic perception of space. Outside, the black SUV remained poised, its polished surface reflecting the cityscape, the chrome rims catching light and casting subtle flares across the penthouse floor, an unspoken reminder of preparedness and presence. Ethan shifted attention to minor details, cataloging every sensory input, the faint hum of the HVAC system, the soft echo of distant city sounds, the way the light highlighted the textures of wood and marble, each element feeding into his strategic assessment. He paused briefly at the living area, observing crystal wine glasses catching the sunlight, the angles of leather chairs, and the precise positioning of decorative objects, noting the potential influence of each on perception and anticipating the reactions that would unfold. Many cliffhanger thoughts continued to build. The first glance will change perceptions, everything will pivot in an instant, timing will dictate impact. Ethan adjusted his posture, inhaling the mingling scents of coffee, cedarwood, and subtle cologne, allowing each sensory detail to inform his preparation, every movement deliberate, measured, and controlled, the cinematic environment around him intensifying the tension without disrupting composure. He walked slowly to the balcony once more, the city stretching beneath him in an intricate mosaic of streets, buildings, and subtle activity, sunlight reflecting across glass and steel, shadows lengthening, reinforcing the immersive atmosphere. The penthouse seemed alive with subtle cues, the faint tilt of a frame, the glint of crystal, the polished edges of marble, all catalogued and integrated into his mental map. Ethan remained outwardly calm, every breath measured, every observation sharpened, balancing awareness, patience, and strategy as the day's pivotal moments approached, understanding that each sensory input, each reflection, each minor detail could alter the trajectory of the encounter and that perfect composure combined with acute observation would be essential in navigating the unfolding scenario. Ethan Carter finally glanced at his watch, the late afternoon sun casting a warm, amber glow across the penthouse, illuminating the polished marble countertops, the oak furniture, and the crystal glassware that reflected the golden light in 1,000 subtle angles. He adjusted his jacket and took a slow breath, the aroma of coffee, vanilla, and subtle cologne grounding him as he prepared to leave, each movement deliberate, measured, and confident. Stepping toward the door, he noticed the way light played across the floor, the soft shimmer on the polished steel appliances, and the gentle sway of a curtain stirred by a faint breeze, all details catalogued in his mind as part of the unfolding plan. Many cliffhanger thoughts surfaced. Everything hinges on timing, every glance will matter, the first impression sets the stage. Ethan moved toward the black SUV parked below, sunlight bouncing off its polished surface and chrome rims, reflecting a subtle flare into the penthouse that reminded him of the precision and control he had maintained throughout the day. As he stepped out onto the balcony, the city stretched beneath him, a complex mosaic of streets, buildings, and distant activity, each sound and movement another element in the carefully orchestrated stage. He scanned the horizon, noting reflections off glass and metal, the shifting shadows of nearby skyscrapers, the faint hum of traffic, and the rhythmic clatter of pedestrians in the distance, integrating each sensory detail into his strategic assessment. The golden hour light illuminated the leather chairs, the crystal decanter, and the polished surfaces of the marble counters, creating a cinematic tableau that heightened suspense while reinforcing the control he exerted over his environment. Ethan's fingers brushed the smooth edges of the balcony railing, anchoring him as he mentally rehearsed each step of the upcoming encounter, anticipating reactions, movements, and subtle cues with methodical precision. He paused to sip his coffee, letting the warmth spread through his hands and chest, noting the faint reflection of the sun in the glassware and the polished surfaces around him, many cliffhanger thoughts threading naturally. Then it begins, the first movement will trigger everything, perceptions will shift instantly. He descended the elevator with calm, steady steps, each click of the polished metal door echoing faintly, the interior of the building bathed in soft light, the faint scent of cedar and leather lingering, all contributing to a heightened awareness of the space. Outside, the city air was crisp, carrying distant aromas of food from nearby restaurants and the soft hum of engines, blending into the cinematic backdrop as he approached the venue, his black SUV waiting to ferry him precisely on time. Ethan entered the car with composure, the leather interior cool beneath his hands, the polished dashboard gleaming, every button, dial, and reflection reinforcing the meticulous attention he had paid to the smallest details. Many cliffhanger thoughts continued. The moment has arrived, all observations will converge, every detail counted toward this exact second. As the SUV pulled away, the city lights began to flicker on, reflecting across polished surfaces inside and out, creating an immersive environment charged with anticipation. Ethan sat back, eyes sharp, analyzing the subtle cues from outside the window, the tilt of passing vehicles, the reflections on building glass, the distant motion of pedestrians, each contributing to the tactical map forming in his mind. The hum of the engine, the faint scent of polished leather, the warm sunlight fading behind the horizon, and the glint of chrome rims all combined into a heightened sensory tableau, each element integrated into his awareness. With every passing moment, suspense built naturally, anticipation mounting, Ethan Carter's composure unwavering, every sensory input catalogued, every detail contributing to the perfect alignment of timing, strategy, and presence as he approached the event that would define the day and reveal the meticulous orchestration of control, perception, and revelation. Ethan Carter arrived at the edge of the estate driveway, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the manicured lawns and highlighting the gleam of luxury vehicles parked in orderly precision. The air was warm, carrying faint floral scents from surrounding gardens, mingling with the subtle aroma of polished leather and freshly poured champagne from the ongoing event inside. He paused at the top of the curved driveway, observing the layout from this vantage point, crystal glasses glinting on tables under soft string lights, polished wood surfaces reflecting the warm glow, and the subtle movement of guests mingling in elegant attire. Many cliffhanger thoughts rippled through his mind. The first interaction will trigger everything, every glance and gesture matters, all preparation leads to this moment. Ethan stepped forward, the polished soles of his shoes clicking lightly against the stone, noting how the sunlight caught the edges of a fountain and the glint of silver cutlery on the tables, integrating each detail into his mental map of the scene. He approached the black SUV parked strategically at the entrance, its surface reflecting the surrounding environment, a silent witness to his arrival, and a reminder of the controlled presence he maintained. Inside, the subtle hum of conversation, soft laughter, and clinking glasses created a layered auditory backdrop that Ethan catalogued, noting shifts in tone, pauses, and the placement of guests, all feeding into his anticipation and analysis. He adjusted the cuff of his tailored jacket, feeling the weight of his presence and the polish of his shoes grounding him, eyes scanning every interaction and reflection, each movement rehearsed and deliberate. The sunlight shifted, casting reflective patterns across marble surfaces and crystal vases, drawing attention to small movements and subtle cues that could reveal intention, and Ethan absorbed it all without outward reaction, keeping composure while his mind parsed the information. Many cliffhanger thoughts surfaced again. Someone is about to move unexpectedly, every reflection could reveal an angle, perceptions will shift in seconds. He inhaled the mixed scents of the estate, the freshly cut grass, faint floral bouquets, polished wood, and crisp air, allowing each to anchor his senses as he analyzed approach vectors, sight lines, and potential reactions, mentally rehearsing gestures, pauses, and strategic positions. Ethan moved slowly toward the entrance of the main building, observing light glinting off a polished marble staircase, the subtle shimmer of crystal chandeliers inside, and the soft glow of string lights outdoors, each element layered into his mental tableau. He catalogued reflections off windows, shadows cast by fountains and decorative planters, the positions of waiting staff and guests, understanding how each could influence perception, while maintaining outward calm and deliberate pace. Many cliffhanger thoughts threaded naturally. The first few seconds will define perception, timing is critical, the subtle shifts will speak volumes. Ethan adjusted his posture, fingers lightly brushing the smooth edge of a marble balustrade, eyes sweeping across the scene, the soundscape of laughter, soft music, and distant traffic feeding his awareness, each sensory input catalogued as part of the intricate tableau he had built mentally. With each step, anticipation mounted, suspense deepened, and Ethan Carter's control over his presence, perception, and timing ensured that every observation, every detail, and every calculated pause would converge to create the perfect moment of revelation as he entered the carefully orchestrated environment, ready to turn observation into impact and presence into undeniable authority. Ethan Carter stepped through the grand entrance of the estate, the warm glow of the setting sun filtering through the tall windows and casting long, golden reflections across the polished marble floors. The faint scent of freshly cut flowers mingled with the subtle aroma of vanilla and polished wood, creating a sensory layer that grounded him as he moved with measured confidence. Guests were scattered throughout the space, their conversations blending into a gentle hum, the occasional clink of crystal glasses punctuating the soundscape, while soft lighting from chandeliers and strategically placed string lights bathed the room in a warm ambience. Ethan's eyes scanned every detail, from the gleam of the marble countertops to the arrangement of decorative vases and the angles of the leather seating, cataloging each subtle cue with deliberate attention. Many cliffhanger thoughts threaded through his mind, every glance, every gesture counts, the reactions will be instantaneous, this first impression will set everything in motion. He adjusted the cuff of his tailored jacket and allowed himself to observe the positioning of guests, noting who was oriented toward the main entrance, who was distracted by conversation, and how the soft reflections on glass and polished surfaces could affect perception. The polished black SUV outside caught sunlight on its rims, a subtle reminder of the precision and preparation he had orchestrated, each detail reinforcing the controlled environment he maintained. Ethan moved further into the room, fingertips lightly brushing the edges of tables and countertops, cataloging the shimmer of crystal, the warm tones of wood, the polished marble, and the way shadows elongated across the floor, integrating each observation into his mental map of the event. He paused to inhale deeply, the layered scents of the estate, flowers, coffee, polished leather, subtle cologne, heightening his awareness and focus as he visualized every potential interaction, anticipating gestures, shifts in posture, and the smallest micro-expressions. Many cliffhanger thoughts surfaced again, a single reaction will cascade, timing is everything, every detail will be interpreted. Ethan allowed his gaze to sweep across the room, noting reflections in windows, angles of light on surfaces, subtle movements among the guests, and the distant hum of the city beyond the estate, integrating each sensory input seamlessly into a tactical awareness of his surroundings. He moved deliberately toward the center of the gathering, each step measured, absorbing the interplay of light, sound, and spatial arrangement, the warm ambient glow highlighting the meticulous organization of the estate, crystal, and polished surfaces reflecting the environment in a subtle, cinematic tableau. Many cliffhanger thoughts threaded continuously. Every perception is being tested, the first interaction will reveal intentions, nothing will go unnoticed. Ethan paused briefly, coffee warming his hands, observing the angles of reflections on the polished marble and crystal, the sway of drapes, the faint patterns of shadows across the floor, each element integrated into his awareness as he prepared to engage. He straightened, shoulders relaxed, eyes sharp, every breath measured, remaining fully composed while mentally rehearsing responses, movements, and observation points, knowing that each sensory detail, each reflection of light, each subtle motion would feed into the perfect orchestration of perception, influence, and eventual revelation as the event continued to unfold before him. Ethan Carter paused at the threshold of the main hall, the warm glow of chandeliers reflecting across the polished marble floors and crystal glassware, bathing the room in a soft, cinematic light that highlighted every meticulous detail of the estate. The gentle hum of conversation blended with the distant clink of silverware and the subtle rustle of fabric as guests shifted positions, creating a layered auditory backdrop that Ethan catalogued with precise attention. Many cliffhanger thoughts threaded through his awareness. Every gaze is measuring, every movement will be noted, the first reactions will reveal everything. He stepped forward deliberately, feeling the smooth marble under his shoes and noting the subtle sheen of leather furniture, the angles of polished tables, and the reflections in the glassware, integrating each element into his mental map. The black SUV parked outside glinted as the sun dipped lower, its polished surface a reminder of the precision and control Ethan maintained, while outside, the city began to twinkle in the fading light, distant sounds blending seamlessly into the sensory tableau. He observed the positioning of guests, their attention momentarily drawn to the central entry, noting subtle shifts in posture and eye contact, each micro-reaction feeding into his anticipation of the unfolding social dynamics. The faint aroma of polished wood, vanilla from a lingering candle, and the rich scent of coffee mingled in the air, grounding him as he assessed sight lines, lighting angles, and reflective surfaces, visualizing how each detail could influence perception. Many cliffhanger thoughts surfaced. The next movement will trigger recognition, timing and positioning are everything, the subtle shifts will set the stage for impact. Ethan's fingers brushed the edge of a polished table, noting the glint of sunlight on crystal, the warmth of the marble, and the interplay of shadows across the floor, each contributing to a cinematic awareness of his surroundings. He moved slowly through the hall, noting reflections off windows and glass, the angles of chandeliers catching light, the subtle sway of drapes in the evening breeze, and the glint of silver cutlery on the tables, integrating each sensory cue into his tactical analysis. Many cliffhanger thoughts threaded continuously. Every detail has significance, observations must remain precise, the first impression will set the tone. Ethan inhaled deeply, letting the scents of flowers, polished wood, and subtle cologne anchor his awareness, each breath reinforcing his composure and mental clarity. He paused near the center of the hall, fingertips brushing the smooth marble, eyes scanning reflections and angles, analyzing guest behavior and the impact of environmental cues, the cinematic interplay of light and shadow enhancing the suspense and anticipation. Many cliffhanger thoughts persisted. Perception will shift with the first interaction, every reflection matters, the orchestration is nearly complete. Ethan maintained outward calm, every movement deliberate, each sensory input catalogued and analyzed, integrating light, sound, scent, and spatial arrangement into a cohesive awareness that positioned him to convert observation into strategic advantage, the stage set perfectly for the revelation and responses that were about to unfold within the luxurious, meticulously detailed environment of the estate. Ethan Carter finally reached the center of the grand hall, the warm evening light now casting rich amber hues across the polished marble floors, reflecting off crystal glasses and gleaming silverware on meticulously arranged tables. The soft hum of conversation and clinking of glasses created a layered soundscape, mingling with the faint scent of flowers and the subtle aroma of vanilla lingering in the air, grounding him as he moved deliberately through the space. Many cliffhanger thoughts ran through his mind. Everything is about to pivot, the first reaction will reveal intentions, every detail counts in this moment. He paused, observing the guest's subtle shifts in posture and eye contact, the angle of light across polished surfaces, the reflections in windows and mirrors, all catalogued in his mind as he prepared to turn observation into presence and impact. The black SUV parked outside reflected the warm glow of the sunset, a polished reminder of control and preparation as Ethan scanned the room, noting the soft sway of curtains, the glint of crystal, the polished edges of tables and countertops, and the way shadows fell across the marble, each contributing to his calculated awareness. He adjusted the cuff of his jacket, feeling the weight and texture of fine fabric grounding him, his eyes sweeping across the room with a meticulous precision that allowed him to predict attention, posture, and reactions before they happened. Many cliffhanger thoughts continued: perceptions are shifting, timing is everything, the next movement will create impact. Ethan moved with deliberate composure, cataloging reflections of light and subtle sounds, the soft hum of HVAC blending with distant city noises and the gentle chatter of guests, each sensory detail integrated into a mental map that reinforced his situational advantage. He paused briefly by a crystal-topped table, fingertips tracing the smooth edge, noting how the light caught the surface and reflected across the polished marble floor, creating a cinematic tableau that heightened suspense and drew attention to his presence without a single word. Many cliffhanger thoughts threaded naturally: the first glance will change everything, all observations converge here, the moment of revelation is imminent. Ethan inhaled deeply, the aroma of coffee, vanilla, and subtle cologne anchoring him, eyes moving methodically across chandeliers, polished surfaces, mirrors, and windows, each reflection and shadow analyzed and integrated into his strategy. He allowed a slow, measured step forward, every motion controlled, every breath deliberate, absorbing the warm evening light, the cinematic reflections, the subtle layering of sounds, and the faint shift in ambient temperature, maintaining perfect composure while the anticipation built. Many cliffhanger thoughts persisted: every detail observed, every movement will have consequence, the full effect will reveal itself in the next moment. Ethan's presence became both anchor and focal point in the room, each element of the environment reinforcing his authority, control, and awareness as he prepared for the culmination of timing, observation, and strategic positioning, ensuring that every gesture, glance, and reflection aligned perfectly to deliver impact and command attention, the cinematic tableau of light, scent, and sound intensifying the suspense and heightening the immersive experience as the days meticulously